Welcome to the Wednesday, February 16th, 2022 Garrison Board of Education regular business meeting. Dusty, will you call the roll, please?
Jocelyn Apicello.
Excused.
David Gelber.
Here.
Madeline Julian.
Here.
Courtney McCarthy. Here. Kent Schacht.
Here.
Matthew Speiser.
Here.
Sarah Tormey.
Here. All right, the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, up next we have agenda changes or approval. Does anyone have any recommended changes to this evening's agenda? Okay. Can you put that new business thing in here? No. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby approves the agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. Thank you. First up on the agenda this evening, we have a capital project update with TetraTech and Calgi Construction. Eric, Mike is all yours. Enjoy the podium. Thank you.
I'm going to adjust it up a little bit here. Testing. All right. Okay. Thank you for having us here tonight. Dominic Calgi is here with us tonight also. I'm going to go through it briefly. This is a very similar presentation to previous months we've met with you. So after we're done, we can ask all the questions you want. I'll just go through and get it done. So first off, where we are right now, we are moved into the third region of construction. The first one being the elementary area, classrooms 22 to 25 in the back. Then we came around last time to 28, 30, and 31. The old science room, that whole area is renovated now. And there's some things that are still in the process, which we'll get to. And now currently, we're in 11, 13, and 14, which is 2 classrooms and the new nurse's office. That area on the main hallway there is under construction. They've done finishes in the main hallway. The ceilings are happening right now, so as you go out tonight, you can see pop your head in any of those spaces. The floors are in, the ceilings are laid out, and they're almost done with most of the work. The casework is complete in all the areas that we've worked in so far. As of basically tonight, they're still working on a couple finishing touches, but this week the casework will be done. The sinks will be functional in the area we just left. So the district has been very thoughtful and flexible in moving into spaces that are ready for occupancy but not complete. Casework has been something that's been lagging. We have all of it now, but for instance, 28, 30, and 31, the teachers have been using those spaces without casework. Now they have the casework in, and now the plumbing is happening. So there's just these little pieces are being finished up as we move forward through the building, and they move into spaces. And that may be the case in this area that we're hoping to be all complete in the first week of March with the current area of 11, 13, and 14. The nurse's office is going to have a couple cabinets and components that are not ready yet, so that's still in the works. But the space is going to be complete shortly as well. So that's where we are with construction at the moment. When last we met, we were talking about server room work and other things that were going to impact spaces. The server room was reconfigured and adjusted so that the infrastructure work being done by Edutech, who's the district's consultant, was able to continue. So a number of those systems have continued forward, but now there's some more power that's needed in a couple of the data closets. So there's a proposal request to add some power that will enable them to install the rest of the systems, which are happening. But that server room is the final configuration. The server room is in the library space. It projects in that library space, and that room is ready to go. The ceilings are being done this week. The flooring is going to have to wait until summer because the flooring is going to require the server room being taken out of the room, the server equipment being taken out of the room, do the floors, and then put it back. So that'll be a full couple-day shutdown to do that work. So that's going to be pushed off till the summertime. The library right now has the 5th grade classroom underneath the lower area, and the main space has been used by the district as a recess and a gathering space, especially with the cold weather we've been having. But that's an area where all the casework for the project is being stored in that area. The casework for the art rooms, which are the next phase, is currently in that space. So the district's been very flexible with the contractor, allowing them to store all the casework in that area. There still is a large open area, but it's it's a work in progress, that room. The HVAC, not a lot of progress with the middle school. The units are actually, the new units in some cases are in the mechanical spaces alongside the existing equipment, which is going to be removed in the summertime. So they're staging right now for all that middle school work. But you asked about air conditioning, and I have no further information about air conditioning. It's still something that we'd like to see, but at this point I have no news about whether that's going to happen early or not. Right now, it seems like that may just be pushed to summer, but we're working on that one still. Go ahead. Thank you. So this is a picture of that phasing plan I just discussed. The blue area is what's under construction right now. In the hallways, the main hallway and also the back hallway by the kindergarten room, we have new floors in those spaces, and the ceilings are going in right now. The classroom spaces 11 and 13 are the first two classrooms. Those have new floors and new ceilings. 14, the floor was delayed a little bit, and we're still finding out about that because the laminate flooring, that floor is the nurse's office, and it has a waterproof laminate floor system. It's seamed linoleum is what it is. It's a green product, and it's water resistant. And when they rolled out the seamed linoleum, there are different colors that didn't match from the same dye lot. So that had to go back, and it's going to delay that maybe a week or two. You can see in the library there, that red area, that's where the furniture mostly is, in the library right now. The classes 22, 25 are on upper right. The yellow area, the classrooms are ready, but the corridors still need work. And the orange area is where we're going next. So in the first or second week of March, we're going to be transitioning out of the blue classrooms and moving into the art room and the collaboration space, which is right next to it. So we're still coordinating that with the district, with Allison and the staff, to make sure that can happen in such a way that curriculum is supported and so forth. But right now the plan is to do that transition in the middle of March. And also over the April break, we're going to be working in that middle area, the old entrance, doing another round of abatement, which has been the last bit of abatement inside the building that's part of the project. So that's going to be happening. That work, as you can see in that orange area, the next phase will be taking place in March and April. Go ahead. Moving on to change orders. There have been a number of change orders. You guys processed a bunch of these the last time you met. Hudson Valley is the electrical contractor, and they have a number of change orders. A lot of these were T&M change orders that came far under the numbers that they give. We give them a time and material allowance for repair work in the classrooms. They've been going around proactively upgrading outlets, addressing wire mold and other outdated systems that were in the spaces to clean them up. So they've been doing that on a ticket basis, which means we watch the work, keep track of the time, and we gave them an allowance of $15,000, and they spent, what did they spend there? Classroom repairs, the top one. They spent, out of the $15,000, they spent $3,372. So they've been very, very frugal with, and that's for all the classroom repairs in that whole first wing. These other things involve the conduit at the lift opening. You know, there's a wheelchair lift in the space where the music room is right now. That lift is going to allow handicapped access to the kindergarten space, or to the whole floor, that floor level, and the CSE space below. That's no longer the kindergarten; it got swapped. Excuse me, but that lift is going to make the entire building handicap accessible, which it currently isn't because there's no way to get from one floor to the other without that lift. The electric panel at the ladder is a coordination item at the conference room. Just had to be moved from an existing condition. Room 21 is downstairs in the CSE. There was a discovered wall that was a double wall and had electrical in it, and that had to be moved. The theatrical service upgrade is an improvement for the theater area that's going to allow you guys better capability for your programming. HVAC power and disconnects is a coordination issue between the mechanical equipment, which was purchased directly from Trane, and the mechanical contractor. The documents, it wasn't clear who was doing the power. It was supposed to be by Trane, but they didn't include it, and so it's one of those things that we had to pick up. And it's unfortunately in this methodology of implementing a project, things like that are certain to happen because typically the mechanical contractor would order the equipment themselves and be a single source provider for all the related systems. In this case, in the interest of time, and it worked out well, as we all know, we got all the equipment in time, but things like that can fall through the cracks. Who's got the responsibility for that specific power connection and the disconnects for those units? So that was done. Again, Hudson Valley, that was the number for the first phase. There was a question last time about whether this is for all of it. there's more coming for the next round of unit ventilators. They have the same issue, and that's going to be coming in the next change order related to that. They've been doing it on a time and material basis, and again, far under what we expected. The electrical chase construction is for panels that wouldn't go in the closets because of the discovered condition. We move those into the hallways. There's an electric chase by the kindergarten room and one by the main admin area, and those were additional to the contract. Also, classroom 28, the ceiling height went down a few inches because of coordination with mechanical equipment. And in classroom 27 and 28, we discovered that the window sills were pretty much shot. And this was to provide beautiful new Corian window sills for those spaces. So that's again, the 27 and 28 in the back area. So those are ones that you looked at, I think, the last time. Actually, no, the first ones, the 6 Hudson Valley ones, you guys had seen the last time. The Meyer 18 and 19 are new for this time that you guys are looking at tonight. Go ahead. And sorry, I'm moving at 1,000 miles an hour. I'm going to try to slow down deliberately now. Change order summary. So this chart shows where we are financially in terms of the main project and the change orders that have happened. The original contracts for the projects added up to about $6 million. Up to this point, we've approved about $300,000 worth of change orders, including expensive ticket items like the transformer and the cafeteria ceiling and other things like that, which were discovered or incidental conditions along the way. The pending change orders means everything we're anticipating or it's currently in the works is another $84,000, and that's going to be coming out probably next weeks or months as we get towards summer. That's everything we can see with our crystal ball what's happening now. The total of those, the 318 and the 84, is 402. That's the total amount of change orders. And you look at the percentages, most of them are for Meyer, who's the general contractor. Am I not on the thing? I'm so loud. And then the rest of them are for the electrical contractor in terms of the percentages. We haven't had a lot of change orders, as you see, for the mechanical contractor. And that's part in terms of how the delivery method was done. The equipment not being theirs, there's less under their plate. But you could consider some of those Meyer ones and electrical ones kind of fall into that category as well, as you know, because they're tied into that work. And so the overall percentage is about 6%. Go ahead to the next slide. This is a chart that just shows you, it's roughly one-third between owner-requested items that are improving the quality of the building, field conditions which are discovered as we go through construction and things are not where we thought they were, and we open up walls and discover things. And the other one is architect-initiated improvements, which have come from TetraTech to make the whole job go together better. So go ahead to the next slide. So this is looking at the overall financials in terms of the contract status we are right now. At this stage of the project, I say we're over 50% complete with all the contract work. And here you look at the total payments, we're about 45% in terms of the payments. So that's appropriate. Typically the payments in the process lags about a month behind the actual status of construction because of the application process, reviewing it, and then finally issuing payments to the contractors. But you see right there, the 318 is the approved change orders that are part of those contracts now. And then the remaining contracts, so we've paid about $2,892,000 out of the $3,500,000 contracts that we have in the project. So the payments are tracking well with the course of the work. Go to the next one. Last time we showed you this new spending analysis chart, and it's very similar to how it looked last time. This includes all project expenses, including the soft costs, which are part of the budget. As we mentioned last time, we are underspending, and we anticipate underspending those soft costs by a significant amount, unless Joe has any changes that he knows about. So it looks like right now, we're going to be, we're predicting our soft costs are going to be about almost $300,000 under our original budget. So our total budget for the project, based on the bond, is $9,046,000. So far to date, we spent about $4.4 million, which leaves us about 4.8. And there's about 4.8 of pending costs, which is the commitments to contractors, the commitments to Edutech, to train, to pay for the mechanical equipment, and soft costs that we are expecting based on fees and so forth that are pending on the project. So we believe right now, including all the open change orders and all the work on the table, that we are anticipating spending about $9.2 million of total costs on the project. And I'm sorry, I misspoke earlier. The bond is for $9.9 million. I'm sorry, I'm misreading my own slide here. So the bond is $9.9 million. Our budget, when we did the bid allowance, was actually under that by almost $900,000. So at this point, if you take the 9.2 that we anticipate spending on the project, and take that off of the 9.9 of the total budget allowance, we have about $730,000 of contingency at this point in the project, which, considering we're 50% done, and we have all the equipment here, we have all the casework here, and we've opened up most of the spaces, it's a pretty comfortable place to be in terms of anticipating discovered conditions and unexpected work going forward. And that contingency includes that pending change orders that we're anticipating for the remainder of the project. So that's where we are. Any questions? And there's another slide too, but we'll get to that.
I'll kick it off with a question. With that 700,000.
You're not on the speaker quite yet. I don't think we can hear you.
Okay, can you hear? All right. Of that 700,000, what are the restrictions on what we can spend that on? Given that it was part of the original bond in terms of the capital project, there are going to be restrictions. Can it go towards future capital projects? Does it have to be spent within the scope of this capital project?
Yeah, so it has to
Microphone, she's going to come yell at you in a second.
Thank you for reminding me that. It has to be within the scope, the original scope. So there can be additional work that we do that's related to the scope. So we have to do an analysis of all the things that were included in the original authorization and how that was structured to determine how far we can go with additional project-related activities. So there are some things that if we had no work in an area and it wasn't designated on the scope, we can't do it. Like, for example, if we wanted to rebuild the field across the street, that wasn't a part of the scope, so we wouldn't be able to do that. But there may be some additional roofing and some other things potentially that we could do if the scope was general enough to include them. So we're going to be looking at that. As we get further along into the project, we're going to look to see if there's other opportunities for us. One of the things we're looking at is the water heaters that are a part of this current system, because they would be the only thing that would be left running on fuel oil once we get rid of the heating system. So that's one of the items that we're looking at, because we are doing some plumbing work as a part of the project. Potentially we could do that. So we'll see.
And Sarah, I would add to what Joe said, we also are considering adding some electrical outlets in the new learning common. So that space was originally the gymnasium, and there were very few outlets. So we have met with the architects, and that would be, we believe, considered part of the scope of the project. So we do have some other ideas. We're doing some research. We want to keep a close eye and make sure that that remaining contingency is still there, of course, before we make formal proposals. But Joe and I will certainly come back to the board with some proposals for additional work that we could potentially accomplish within this budget.
Thank you. Kent, did you have a question?
Can you remind us again regarding the learning commons, which I think we're going to see shortly, if the contingency can be used for any part of that as well, if we wanted to delay some of those costs to the end of this project, if that was something we wanted to do?
You can use some of the project funds for things in that space, but what typically, unless you're building a new library, things like furniture and equipment is not considered aidable. So you could potentially use it for the project, but you wouldn't get building aid on it. Now that's not necessarily a large concern for a district like this. We don't get a high aid ratio for building aid, but that is something to consider.
Thank you. Madeline, do you have a question?
Thank you for the presentation. It sounds like we're on budget, on schedule. The 6% change order, that includes the pending change order?
No, if we go back to that slide, actually maybe, I'm sorry, I answered quickly.
The 6% increase.
Yeah, the pending is in that number, you're right.
Okay.
Go back one more, if you could, Dusty. One more. One more. There we go. So the 402 includes the pending. So that's all in what we're anticipating right now.
So I think that's a really good place to be at, giving a project like this. Although it seems like a lot of change order, it's actually for existing condition and where we are at.
And
we're in a
also
good place.
considering a lot of those change orders have been district initiated to improve spaces. A third of that, 2% of that is, cleaning the walls up, repainting and fixing and patching and repairing other areas that are transforming this from just an infrastructure project to really an overall improvement. So you're getting a lot of good value for that 6%, I think.
Great. I have another question. The VRF system that's going in.
I'll say it again.
The VRF system that's going in?
VRF?
Mm-hmm.
The mechanical.
Yes, the mechanical system that's going in. And I think I asked this question before. We do have a commissioning agent reviewing it and making sure that it's functioning how it's designed.
Correct.
And then the staff will be trained on how to use and maintain the system.
All that's in the project. Now, we're in the preliminary stage, and because of the phasing, there's equipment that's running that's not fully commissioned yet, and that's just going to be the way it is until we get towards the end. And there's been sort of ad hoc training going on, but there'll be formal training per the documents in the summertime before we get back to school.
Great.
And that commissioning, they're involved in the process, but right now, again, it's just checking the boxes, making sure what's specified is what's being provided. The actual commissioning of tweaking all the flows and all that sort of thing, that hasn't really happened yet, and that's not probably going to happen until summertime.
Okay, all right. And I keep asking this because once everything is complete, that's going to be the source of heat and air conditioning for the
Correct.
for the
There's
building.
Sort of dual systems, the unit ventilator system and the heat pump system,
And the heat
which
pump.
are both currently active in the first areas of renovation, are going to be active throughout the areas of work, which will give you multiple sources of heating and the VRF source for cooling. So it's a high efficiency, very, very specific and easy to manage system, hopefully.
Great, great. I think that's all my questions for now. But thank you so much. This sounds
You're
like
welcome.
everything's going great.
Great. Do I have any further questions on the board? All right. Thank you very
Well,
much.
as you guys go out, you should. I know you saw them briefly after the meeting
sorry.
we just had, but.
Oh, you have one more slide. That's right.
Oh, there's the final slide. The wrapping it up slide. Thank you, Dusty. So, as the rest of the year, right now is January, February, and the first week of March or so, we're going to be transitioning out of where we are right now, the blue area, classrooms 11, 13, and nurse, moving to the art room and collaboration space, March and April. We have nothing scheduled to happen in May and June until the end of school. So we have a window of time which we're looking how to occupy that time. We're pursuing maybe accelerating the CSE and lift area, so that area gets done in advance. Anything we can do to try to minimize the load for the summertime and get things accomplished, we're looking to do that. And we're working together. You guys have been great. Allison and everyone has been great in trying to think about ways that we can get into spaces to make them as complete as possible. As I mentioned, we have all the casework. We have a lot of the equipment here, so we can start to accelerate those spaces. One of those things might be municipal flooring. It's spring break. I mentioned we'll be doing abatement. The slide doesn't say, but we just had a meeting this last week, and we're probably going to be looking at improvements outside, looking at the field and getting that ready for use as soon as we can, and other things happening in that spring break time frame. And then over the summer is the balance. So the balance consists of truly renovating the library, the kindergarten room, the music room, and the cafeteria. Those spaces are going to be completely transformed. We've been making do with a kindergarten that has the carpet, which has been nice, but it's still a space in process. That space is going to be ready for you in the summertime, in the end of the summertime before September. As you remember, the main office is going to have a security vestibule in that space, and that system that's all on track for the summertime construction. And the admin area is going to get upgrades to the mechanical systems, and the toilet rooms, the multi-user toilet rooms, are going to be fully renovated in that space. So it's going to be quite a transformation when we're done with this whole process. And then the mechanicals here are going to be completely replaced. And at the end of the summer, we'll have spaces where there were mechanicals that are just open spaces, and that's already been allocated. People, I'm sure, are fighting over what's going to go in there. But that's going to be what's happening over the summer. As soon as we can, we're going to start in May decommissioning the steam system starting to demolish the unused portions of the middle school systems so that those are out of the way and we can hit the ground running to install all that stuff in the summertime. So that's what the future holds for us. We're on track to be done in ample time in the summer, so it's looking good.
Do you have any additional questions after that slide? We're good? All right.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
See
very much. Have a
soon.
great night.
Thank you, Dominic, for coming as well. I appreciate it. Okay, next up, we have the Learning Commons design presentation. Carl, you're leading this evening? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. This is a follow-up presentation. Michael Sammartano presented the initial design proposal. We did receive feedback from the board, from some of our staff, actually. And at this point, we have a follow-up presentation and a recommendation to the board. So Dusty, if you could forward, please. So we're going to start with the budget. So when we initially worked on this design plan, we were looking for what we would want in the Learning Commons space. It was, of course, the library. We are renaming it. Prior to being a library, it was a gymnasium. It is a beautiful open space. We definitely see it as being the central hub of our school district and being utilized throughout the school day, as well as evenings and even weekends. The budget, though, as Joe and I actually start working on our 2022-23 budget, we do believe we are going to face some headwinds. There are some increases. So what we decided to do here was work backwards. We know we have a $120,000 rebate that we expect because the project is protective of the environment, especially with our HVAC system. So we do expect to get a green energy rebate of $120,000. Also, we've been speaking with GSEF, and they are interested in fundraising and really focusing in their spring thaw event on raising money specifically for this purpose, to help us complete the Learning Commons. And they're estimating that they could raise approximately $25,000, but they also have $4,500 allocated for a stage. So that's where you see on the right the number 30,000. Dusty, next. So first, the furnishings. Basically, what we're proposing is a variety of flexible furniture in this space. So again, during the day, there would be instruction. There may be younger children in there. We want furniture that would accommodate our primary grades, but also our middle school. We do see this space being an option for children during recess, particularly during the winter months, when they are not able to go outside, just having either the gym or the Learning Commons as an option after they eat lunch. Mobile and fixed locking storage. The space does not have closets, so this was important for us to store materials and to keep the space organized. We also believe there is a need for acoustical panels from the ceiling. There is a lot of echo in there. Again, it was a gym. So that will help absorb the sound, especially if you have 2 or 3 classes working in there. The acoustical panels will definitely serve an important purpose. Also, space dividers. In a similar way, we like to be able to have 2 to 3 classes in there at once working simultaneously. Maybe they're collaborating, or maybe they are working on different initiatives. So being able to divide the space up makes a lot of sense to us. We also plan to use it for professional development for our staff. So you could even potentially have students working in one section, teachers working on professional development in another. Dusty, next. Madeline made a wonderful recommendation last meeting when we presented to make sure that the furniture is environmentally safe and they're responsible with their manufacturing of the furniture. So the company that we plan to purchase from, if the board okays this, is KI. You can read about them. I did present the board with a link to their website, but they really are focused on environmental stewardship, responsible product design, and sustainable manufacturing. Everything from their use of water to their recycling materials, to their employment, and it's pretty impressive. So if you want more detail about the company that we plan to purchase from, certainly do a little more research on that link. Next, the technology. Initially, when we came to you last time, we were thinking about technology that we started to price out, and it was looking more in the $60,000 to $70,000 range. We were thinking of 3 big screens. However, again, being mindful that we may have some challenges in the upcoming budget year, we decided to work backwards, scale back, and we're hoping to implement all of the technology for somewhere around $20,000 to $25,000. And that still would include 3 big screens. They may not be as big as the original one we were considering, which was like 170 inches, but maybe it'll be more like 110 inches, but it would still be very impressive and the latest technology. So people have asked, what is going to happen in the space? And there would be a number of different, teaching strategies going on. Engineering design, play space, that could be recess or that can be led by teachers. Kinesthetic learning, where the children can move around. Personalized learning could be happening there. Showcase learning, peer teaching, students making presentations. It would be the perfect space. Not only academic presentations, but even with our music and performing arts departments, we definitely see this space being utilized in many different ways. So, So engineering design, David, I think I could give you a good example. Rachel Arbor, when she presented a few months back, talked about a real-life problem that we had here, which is the school has a pet tortoise that has been here for a number of years, but we did not have an appropriate space for that pet. So the students actually worked on designing a more appropriate habitat for the tortoise. They did an awful lot of research on what would be appropriate for a tortoise. It's an African tortoise. They brought in experts in architect and engineering, and then we worked on designing a space for the tortoise. So there you have an example of like project-based learning, but it's a real authentic problem that our students had to resolve and come up with solutions for. And this space, again, would be the perfect space to have that type of learning happening. The picture you see on this next screen is right outside the business office. You have our students working on a podcasting project. Ms. Albano, I saw in the audience, is doing this great civil rights project at the middle school. And our students are developing presentations and podcasts. Unfortunately, right now, because of construction, because we don't have the learning commons, they're working in the hallways. Now, they're doing an amazing job. They're very creative at finding quiet spaces, but you will see as I show you the model of the new learning commons, what an improvement it would be over what you see in the picture right now. Okay, the design. One more, Dusty. Okay. So this is what we believe will be, aside from maybe making a few more tweaks, this would be a design. It's a view from the portion, the back of the Learning Commons space. Right now it's being used actually as a 5th grade classroom. There's a lower ceiling there. It's underneath one of our middle school classrooms. But we see this as one learning space. Those tables all are actually whiteboards, so you can write on them. Students can do collaboration and planning, and then, of course, they clean very easily, and there's all different types of seating, different heights, different shapes for students, and it's very flexible, and all of that can be moved around. This is just a different view. This would be facing the front hallway. To the left, you do see this wall. That is where the server room is, behind that wall. But we definitely see one media space off to the right there. There's these banquette seating that we envision students working at. Also, there's some soft seating that can be moved around. Small groups can work there. During recess, a student could just kick back and read a book and enjoy the space. From what we see in other schools, we visited some other schools, that soft seating is like the very first thing the children run to, and they really enjoy it. Dusty, one more. So this view, off to the right, you do see a stage. We're envisioning a stage that would be maybe 8 to 10 inches off the ground. But this is a place where students could make presentations. If our PTA brought in, let's say, an expert guest speaker for parents, Presentations could occur there. And behind it, you do see a large screen. That was the original, I think, 170-inch screen. It may be a bit smaller, but we still think this would be a very useful space. Also, our performing arts, we could have a small chorus concert or a theatrical performance. If there's only 1 or 2 grade levels, this would be a great space to accomplish that, as opposed to the gym, which is wonderful. We have a stage, but it is a very large space, especially if you have a small audience. To the left, you see a pod, and that is an enclosed space that would be built right into the Learning Commons, and in that, a small group of 2, 3, or 4 students. So I showed you earlier that there were students working on a podcast in a hallway. Every time someone passed by, they had to stop, they had to record again. This would be a perfect place. There'd be a good amount of soundproofing in there, and students could collaborate in there. And the glass you see, students actually can write on the glass. And whatever project they're working on, they can make notes. And we just see that as a space that will be very popular and utilized. Next. Here's just another view. You see the soft seating, a variety of seating that the students, I do think, will enjoy. Above, you do see they look like leaves, and there's some lighting, and that is to absorb some of the sound. It serves a dual purpose. Dusty, next. And just another view. This is from the front of the Learning Commons looking into the back. And there's an overview. And one more. Okay, that's the end. So once again, we're thinking not to allocate any budget money for this project. It would be the rebate money, and we're looking for guidance from the board if you're prepared to give feedback tonight, but our proposal is to take that rebate money. That would cover all of the furniture you just saw, and then with the GSEF grant money, if they have a successful fundraiser, that would complete the technology aspect of the new Learning Commons. Questions?
Floor. It looks like there's rug. Is that part of capital project or, okay,
It is, Courtney.
great.
Okay, I have a couple of questions, if no one else does. So, has GSOF specifically selected certain items to fund using some of the funds they've raised previously? For example, are they agreeing to the stage part? Are they agreeing to the projector? Are they just agreeing to a $30,000 amount?
Sarah, the GSEF informed me that they have $4,500 that was raised in previous years that is earmarked specifically for a stage. So that would go towards the construction of the stage that you see. But then they believe during their spring fundraiser, they could raise an additional $25,000. And we are thinking that, so they were not specific about it must be spent this way or that way. I think they're happy just to partner with us and complete the entire project.
Okay.
Okay.
And should I appreciate the not wanting to use the funding, not wanting to fund this from next year's budget, given how tight it will be. If we do not use the rebate money for this, are there other limitations on the rebate money? Will it be folded into our regular budget? It'll just go into fund balance, essentially. Is that correct, Joe?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. All right, do I have any other questions? Madeline?
For the acoustics, was that designed or was there a acoustic design as part of it, or?
Yes, Madeline. Dusty, maybe if you could backtrack a few slides. So you see there's a combination of panels strategically placed. Okay, this view you could see if you look up towards the top, there are just panels, but additionally then they look like leaves, but there's also lighting. So there's two types of acoustic.
So that's going to be sufficient? It's been tested or checked?
The company that, actually they were recommended to us by TetraTech, they do schools and libraries across the country basically, and this is what they're recommending. So, knowing our square footage, the height of the ceilings, we gave them all of the dimensions of the space, and this is the recommendation for us.
And I think this was probably asked already. So if we decide not to move forward with this, what would it mean to the school? Do we lose that money? We have other options? I just want to know what our options are, knowing
Sure.
how tight the
Well, we
budget
did
is.
not, we do have the old furniture that was in the library from years past. We did not discard it, it's in storage. So one option is to put back the old tables and chairs, and maybe just accept the GSEF money to do some technology. I mean, that is an option. You know, the bulk of this project is that 120,000 of furniture. So again, the rebate money, as Joe said earlier, it can be used for other things. There's no real restrictions on it. But we believe we came this far. We've invested in the capital project. This is probably the best space in the district. So we are, again, there are other needs. So I understand why you ask the question, and we certainly have a long list of things that need to be done in the district. But, you know, that 120,000 really fits perfectly into the budget for finishing this space.
David?
Carl, I'm sorry. Carl, will this space, which is really exciting to see it, will it enable learning activities that are not taking place now, or is it just a place to sort of a different location for existing learning activities?
Good question. I think our teachers are doing an amazing job of making do with what we have, but it's just not ideal. I'll give you another example. Mrs. Giuliano had her students design and construct playgrounds. They all had unique designs, and then they presented to our kindergarten class. But they did that in a hallway. That was one of our new finished hallways. It was clean, it was bright, and a great activity. But it would be much better in a place like this, much more conducive to presenting, to listening, to working together. So you do see things happening that are exciting and innovative and project-based learning and collaboration, but the classrooms are average-sized classrooms, and to really spread out and bring 2 or 3 classes together or different grade levels together, as I described, this is what we believe we need.
Courtney?
Okay, 2 quick questions. One, very quickly, if this were to happen, can we move our board meetings back into this space?
Absolutely. Dusty and I have been in there looking at the space, and we have an exact idea of where we would set up for the board meetings. Less of an echo, for sure. And again, all that furniture is movable. So we really were thoughtful about, we have a small custodial team, and not creating an extra burden for them. All of that can be moved aside and rearranged in any way that you want. So definitely yes.
Great. I see, let's see, I'm on slide 14, the second to last one. So it looks like there are some either storage or bookshelves there at the back in black. We had a lot of books in our library. Obviously, education has changed over the last couple of years. The kids are pretty much doing everything on their Chromebooks. Will some of the books from the library, I'm sure everything's in storage right now. What happens to those books? Is somebody going to go through them? Will some go back into the space? Do some get discarded? Do some go to teachers? Has that happened already? Is there a plan to have materials in this space?
There is, but I will say the vast majority of books will be in classrooms. So right now, as Eric said earlier, not all the casework was complete. We're starting to complete that casework, some of it supply chain issues, that kind of thing. But additionally, bookshelves, we did talk last meeting about bookshelves, and each one of our elementary classrooms has a classroom library of somewhere between 1,200 and 2,000 books for our children. So that is what we envision, having individual classroom libraries at every grade level. That actually started with the GSEF grant, and now it's maintained and supported by the district budget. There were books in the library. We're thinking about going through them and disseminating them to the classrooms. But right at this time, many of these books are still boxed and still in storage. Now, in the library, there will be a wall when you first, and I'm sorry, excuse me, the Learning Commons, the previous library. When you walk through the main entrance, there will be one section of all bookshelves. And we envision, for example, Ms. Albano's project that she's doing with her students. We have a great partnership with the Desmond Fish Library, and we could have them bring in an entire collection on civil rights. So our students could be doing their research online. They could also use books and as resources, and all to support their podcast project and their presentations. So we do believe we'll circle in and out collections in partnership with Desmond Fish.
I have a couple more questions.
Sure.
So if we don't use the money here and we say go to the contingency budget, I know you spoke earlier about the fact that it's not aidable. Can you, Joe, really speak to what that means in terms of how much money we would not get back? Should we say instead, because we could use that contingency money to perhaps fix additional parts of our roof, which is an ongoing concern, if that is within the scope. But if we instead didn't take this, if we rolled this money, this rebate money into our fund balance and instead used contingency for furniture, what does that look from the aidable picture?
Okay, so I have to double check to see what our aid ratio is, but let's say it's for argument's sake, let's say it's 30%. So 30% of the total cost would come back as what's called building aid over the life of the project. So if it was $100,000 and it was aided at 30%, you get 30%. $30,000 over 20 years. That's the way it works. So it's paid. The building aid is paid over the time at which you are borrowing money, which is typically 20 years for renovations. So over those 20 years time, building aid is paid back. So that's what you would be looking at, 30,000 split over 20 years.
So it makes sense then to really focus, because we do have other needs that we will see for the contingency. Hopefully we can look and see if we could find some roofing for contingency as well. Perhaps some other areas that link to the project, and we may still need that contingency. I know we're 50% done, but there is a chance we will need additional asbestos removal. Whatever we find, we may find more hidden walls as well, perhaps.
Yeah,
I don't know, maybe you've opened all the walls, Eric.
As we get further along, the likelihood of that decreases. The nice thing is, as you move towards next summer, it's mostly work. A lot of the work is on the newer section of the building, so we don't expect to find hazardous materials there. You could still find some, but it's not likely. So as you get closer to the summer, there's less things that are unknown.
And do we need to go out to, given the sum of the amount we're asking to spend on this, do we need to go out to bid with the furniture?
It's on state contract.
Okay.
No, since it's state contract, or if it comes off of a cooperative bid, that meets the requirement.
Okay.
KI is a furniture company that does a lot of furniture in the educational space. They're one of maybe 3 large companies that do this kind of work, and they're definitely on state contract, and they're probably on other bids that we have access to as well.
And they're competitively priced compared to the other two in a similar vein?
They are, yes.
Sure.
So regarding the state contract, so usually, this is actually good because it allows you some wiggle room to negotiate even lower than state pricing. Has that been looked at? And usually if you bring in a distributor and have a couple of manufacturers, work with them to lower the cost below the state pricing, and that happens with large institutions. I'm sure BOCES probably does this to see if we can get the best price for the product.
You can sometimes do that, or you can also look at, they may have different, like I said, different bids that they're on, so that there might be different discounts available if they're on another bid. So I would say we would look at ways to drive it down if it's possible to do so.
Great. We did work with a second company. This is our choice, but we do plan to go back to them. I mean, this is their proposed budget, and if we can get them to sharpen their pencil a bit, we will certainly do that.
Just one last clarifying thing. If the board reaches a consensus this evening on allocating the rebate towards the purchase of furniture, that doesn't lock us into specific furniture at this point. We will still come back and see exactly what we're looking at, a price breakdown of all these pieces. This is just saying the rebate will go towards the purchase of furniture, and this is the current plan. Correct?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you. All right, everyone, do I have thoughts on whether we can reach consensus and move forward with using this rebate money? I know it is tough, given that we were looking at a tough year next year for our budget, and this could roll into fund balance as well. But I do take Joe's point that we want to use the aidable funds to get aid as well. And we do have other outstanding building projects, I believe. Facilities, I'm looking at you.
That's right.
Okay. All right, then.
So if we approve this will be ready for September?
Kent, that is the goal. I don't want to guarantee that with, supply chain issues and things that we've dealt with other aspects of the project. But if not September, I would think by, sometime by October, maybe mid-October, late October, we could cut the ribbon on this space and welcome everybody. So, yeah, I definitely this fall.
When are you looking to complete the purchase on this space?
Joe?
So if the board decides that this is the direction we want to go in, this actually would be put into the budget, but it would have an offsetting revenue. Okay, so essentially you would budget for the furniture because it's considered a non-contingent expense. So you would budget for the furniture, budget for the revenue, and if the budget is approved, as soon as it's approved, you could tell the manufacturers it's approved, but the purchase orders would be July 1.
Okay.
So that's next year's budget?
Yeah, because it's considered a non-contingent expense, so the public is supposed to vote on equipment.
All right. Do you have any further questions, thoughts, or any objections at this point to moving forward? Go ahead, Ken.
I'm sorry, this is probably getting too wrapped into the weeds, but so if we're voting on this in the budget vote, we can't order it till July 1st. By July 1st, how good of an idea will we have how much we have left on the contingency, and could we put that up to a public vote on in May to say, should we have contingency left over, can we use this for furniture? Is that all, or is that not possible?
I don't think we can roll the contingency over in that way, can we?
No.
Yeah.
So if this is not coming out of the project, we have to budget for it and budget for the revenue, which this is revenue neutral the way it's designed. If it's coming out of the project, it doesn't necessarily have to be budgeted at all, but there's that it would leave less contingency in the project to do other things. It would qualify as being within the scope of the capital project, but it's not eligible for aid.
And we do believe that there are other things that are aidable and that are needed. We did just complete a building condition survey, for example, and there are a long list of facility, also on our property, retaining walls, things like that. Again, I don't know that the contingency could be used for something like that, but it's possible, because we of course, we installed, a new field behind the building. So, that would be aidable. Additional roofing, which is needed, would be aidable. The electrical work for this space it would make sense to do that under the capital project contingency, again, because it's aidable. And as Joe said earlier, our aid is low, but it's still, why leave money on the table if you could pay for things that are aidable through that contingency?
The easiest way to describe aidable versus non-aidable, the way the architect describes it, which is the simplest way, is if you took the school and you tipped it upside down, if it fell out, it's not aidable. So furniture and equipment is not aidable, but the fixtures and the infrastructure of the building typically is.
Thanks for hearing my attempt at workarounds.
No, these are
Good
all
questions.
good questions. Yeah, exactly. I mean, understanding how to make the most of our money is very important. So, do we have any objections at this point to using this rebate, Madeline?
I do hesitate a little bit, but if the rest of the board is fine with it, it's okay. What I do want to understand is more of the timeline. Do you need this right now in order to issue the purchase orders, or is there time for us just to think a little bit more about it?
We have time. As Joe pointed out, we are building the budget. Our next board meeting will be the initial budget presentation. So I guess the only time constraint is we would like to include this, as Joe explained, as part of the budget, as revenue and then an expenditure. So, but you do have time, I guess, is the simple,
And I think this is great, and we do need it. It's just understanding the priorities and what should be on the top of the list, like the roof. We want to make sure that the capital project that's going to be finished doesn't get damaged if there's a leaky roof. So like that becomes top priority. So it's just understanding the priorities before approving something like this. That's great to have, but we have other needs.
Well, and also keep in mind, although Joe and I will start to present the budget in March and throughout the next 3 board meetings, the board doesn't adopt the budget until April. So I think what we can do is add this to the budget, and if our board, as we go through the budget process together, if the board has, some hesitation and wants to, move it or take it out, then of course there's still time to do that. But in April, once you adopt the budget, then it can't be changed.
My recommendation, everyone, would be to put it in the budget as presented, offsetting the cost. And then when we start to get into budget presentations, see where we are, see where the holes are, see where the gaps are, understanding that we do hopefully want to fill this space somehow. And I think GSF is being very generous with what they're attempting to raise and offering the money, but they certainly aren't going to close the gap any further on this, I don't believe. So I think that would be, does anyone object to putting this in the budget? We'll start to see the presentation, see where we end up. Plan to use this rebate for this furniture at this time without touching the contingency. It also gives the contingency a few more months to see what other needs arise and if we start spending that down more. But I do want to be mindful of the fact that it's not aidable as well. All right? We have a good plan? All right.
Thank you.
There you go. There's your answer. Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. Okay, we are now moving on to, thank you, Dominic, for coming. We are now moving on to public comment. Grab me. Oh, you got it? Okay. Public comment is intended for members of the community to speak openly and voice concerns. In accordance with Policy 3220 of the Garrison Union Free School District, any person wishing to speak shall comply with all provisions of this policy. Comments about specific school personnel or individual students is a violation of board policy. Concerns regarding students or personnel should be discussed privately with the superintendent or appropriate administrator. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and speakers are asked to conduct themselves in a respectful manner. The board will listen to all comments but will not engage in dialogue. Any necessary follow-up will be noted and provided through the appropriate channel. Members of the public wishing to speak during the public comment period are asked to place their name and town of residence on the sign-in sheet in order to speak. We are not on Zoom. First, I have Susan Mounty. Come to the podium, please.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Susan Mowdy. I have 2 children in the district. And I made the decision to come and speak tonight just for a couple minutes because I'm deeply disappointed and honestly kind of angry at how this district has decided to deal with the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and how we are asking our children to cope with the restrictions that have been placed on them. A few weeks back, I reached out to the administrative office and a member of the board and said, look at what our neighboring districts are doing in Westchester and Putnam and Dutchess and Long Island. They are being proactive in their reach out to the governor and asking for clear guidance to off-board masks, off-ramp restrictions. And to be completely frank, my question and request was met with radio silence. I know that everyone here does the best job they possibly can, but I also know that for the past 2 years, my children and other people's children have been suffering. And as a parent, I don't see any end to that suffering. I want you guys to know that as I continue to do research about what's going on in other districts, I found out just recently that in Eastchester, in Tuckahoe, in Sachem on Long Island, in Plainridge, they're making requests of the state government to make changes. Maybe not mass changes. I know those have to come down from the governor, but in Eastchester, for example, they're no longer following social distancing rules. The kids are allowed to eat in the cafeteria with their friends. They're allowed to socialize again. Parents are allowed to come into the school building. So I think the whole reason for me being here tonight is just to kind of redirect the focus to serving the children, to getting parents back in school, to starting to give the kids a glimmer of hope that there is an end to all of these restrictions, and that we are doing something proactively, not reactively, to make these changes. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. All right. Next up, I hope I don't want to miss Pitalev. I'm sorry, I don't want to mispronounce your name.
Hello, my name is Ksenia. I had 3 children in school, and I have 3 teenagers. I'm still here, breathing, living, surviving. I'm here because I love this school. I love the community. I love the staff, even all the new staff that I haven't met. And I'm full of gratitude and respect, as well as appreciation for everything you're doing and everything you've gone through. I'm not here to complain. And I'm here with just a plea. And it's from the heart, so it might be a little mushy, but I would like to give a plea for everyone here and parents to consider unmasking our children. I think it's psychologically and emotionally extremely, extremely damaging. And there are far less positive things that come out of masked children than there are negative. I mean, masks are destructive, especially to little children. I can't imagine being a parent of a little child who can go through an entire school day without seeing the expression on her teacher's face, or without seeing enough smiles to make their day a little brighter. If we have an opportunity to take these masks off, why don't we seize it? Why don't we see it as a victory? Why don't we overcome our fears? And I think our children have been heroes along with everybody else, but I also see them as victims. And this is our opportunity to set them free, let them breathe freely, give them a chance to release them out of a certain type of prison they have been in. And literally, it is imprisonating to be in a mask during the school day. I don't think anyone can disagree with me on that, especially parents. And give us our rights as parents back. Give us a say. Let us feel supported by community. Our schools should be supporting families. Families are their nurturing center. They're the backbone. And our children are our future. And if we have mentally ill children, we don't have a future. Once you've lost your mental health, you have lost everything. You're not going to get it back. And I know the Lakeland School District spent $3 million on their COVID protocols, and now they're voting to spend $7 million on psychological help. That's really scary. It's really scary. This might already be somewhat irreversible, but let's see this as a victory, and let's let our ship set sail. And whatever adults, teachers have fears, I ask you to overcome your fears for the sake of the mental health of our children. It's our future. And I think the time is now. It's not in the near future. It's not, when we sort of feel comfortable and see the green light. It's now. If we miss this, it might just be that little bit too late. So thank you for listening.
Kristen Mcpherson?
Hi, I'm Kristen Mcpherson, and I feel compelled to speak after what I heard at the last board meeting because I heard a lot of reluctance to go along with the hopeful upcoming repeal of the mask mandate in New York. So I've been a Guff's parent since 2013. I currently have a 5th grader in this school, and I care immensely about the holistic health of all the children in this community. It's been a tremendously difficult time for my daughter the past 2 years, marked by sadness and frustrations at what COVID policies such as in-school masking have changed and taken away from her and her peers. And she's also old enough to realize for herself the absurdity of the disconnected policies of school masking from reality. She wonders why she must spend the school day masked when on the weekends she can play and have sleepovers with the very same children, unmasked. She points to the TV, citing all of the unmasked faces at a basketball game or the Super Bowl, and wonders why adults who are at more risk of severe illness than she get to participate in crowds without a mask. Mask theater that's so easily recognized by a 10-year-old should tell us something. And perhaps at one time the masks were justified, but we're far past that point, as there exists an immense amount of data and evidence to demonstrate that mask mandates in school must end. Here's but a few points, articles and studies I encourage you to consider about masks and COVID risks, particular to children in the school environment. The United States is alone in the world in its unprecedented masking of young children. The WHO states that children 5 and under should not be masked, and it recommends against masking 6 to 11-year-olds due to the, quote, potential impact of wearing a mask on learning and psychosocial development. The European CDC recommends masks not be worn by children under the age of 12, and Sweden has never required masks in school with no negative consequences. Only 2 randomized trials have ever been done to measure the impact of masks on COVID transmission. One found no significant impact of masks on stopping transmission, and one reported that surgical masks, not cloth masks, had only a modest impact. A study from Brown on schools in Massachusetts, New York, and Florida in the 2020 to 2021 school year found 0 correlation between cases and mask mandates. And there were many other studies showing the same results. Mask efficacy overall has been based on observational studies. The available clinical evidence of face mask efficacy is low quality, and it's mostly failed to show efficacy. 14 of 16 identified randomized controlled trials comparing face masks to no masks failed to find statistically significant benefit. Studies show that masking is a barrier to speech recognition, hearing, and communication, and masks negatively affect children's ability to read facial expressions, causing anxiety. A study in the UK on masks in schools specifically found that they had physical side effects and impaired identification and communication, both verbal and nonverbal. While children may catch COVID, fatality is extremely rare. Last estimated by the CDC is 0.002% in people under 18 years of age. A pre-vaccine study showed that a child infected with COVID with or without pre-existing conditions had an 8 in 100,000 or 0.008% chance of going into an ICU. And in the same study, the risk of death was 3 in 1 million, That's a 0.0003% chance of dying, with 0 deaths reported in the over 5 age group. It's difficult to emphasize enough how insignificant the risk of COVID is to children, and that's a truth we should all be thankful for. As far as requiring masks on children to protect adults, this is entirely backwards. If an adult individual is concerned about exposure to COVID, they should take responsibility for their own health by taking advantage of the many options now available to them to reduce their risk of illness. For 2 years, I've sat by and acquiesced to the masking of my children for the comfort of others. With our current understanding of risk, transmissibility, and efficacy of masks, as you can see as I'm going like this, it should no longer be tolerable for anyone to let this continue. This week alone, articles have been published in Bloomberg, the New York Times, and The Atlantic arguing against the masking of children and stating what many of us have intuited from the beginning, that one-way masking works. That is to say, having the option and leaving the decision to the family on whether or not their child should be masked is the correct moral and scientific position at this point. Requiring masks for all students cannot be justified, as a child's mental and physical health can never fit into a one-size-fits-all approach. Families should make decisions based on what is right for their child, especially now that there are so many options for individuals who would choose to continue with masking. I could continue on at length, since there's an immense amount of scientific evidence proving that masking in schools is unnecessary and detrimental. Instead, I'll leave you with 2 quotes from experts in their field, along with some resources for further reading below my cited sources. I have a paper copy. As stated by Marjorie Smelkinson, an infectious disease scientist who works for the National Institutes of Health, quote, 2 years into this pandemic, keeping unproven measures in place is no longer justifiable. We reviewed a variety of studies, some conducted by the CDC itself, some cited by the CDC as evidence of masking effectiveness in a school setting, and others touted by media to the same end, to try to find evidence that would justify the CDC's no end in sight mask guidance for the very low-risk pediatric population, particularly post-vaccination. We came up empty-handed, end quote. To conclude with the words of Vinay Prasad, an epidemiologist at UC San Francisco, mandatory masking in schools, quote, isn't a matter of protecting children, their teachers, or their grandparents. It's delusional and dangerous cult-like behavior. Thank you for your time and consideration. Let's follow facts, not fear, and end the masking of our children as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do you have anyone else who wishes to speak? Okay. Come on up. You can sign in. Yes, of course. Come. Yes, please come sign in. That's okay. You're welcome to speak. Thank you. Okay. 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
I'll lift the mic. So my name is Vanessa. I'm actually new, not to the area, but my children are new here this year. I have a 5th grader and I have a 1st grader. And I'm just going to kind of echo the sentiment of the women who spoke already. I have a little bit more, I guess it's a little, I think for some of us it's really a hot button topic for a lot of people. But for me it's particularly personal because my 1st grader has a hearing loss in his left ear. So already there's that added challenge of hearing things properly. And I think we can all agree that the masks make it more difficult to hear. And the school has been tremendously supportive of him and accommodating and giving added services. And we are so appreciative of that. We absolutely are so grateful. But if I can just reiterate, the masks make that challenging situation even more challenging for him. So anything I can do to be an advocate for him, I will always do. And if we can give the parents a choice of looking at their children individually and deciding what's best for their children, I think we should do that when we're able. And the other thing, not only the hearing loss, but he's a 1st grader, and we all have had a first grader or will have a first grader for parents, and that's the age they're learning to read. And that's why it's so important, and there's study after study talking about how difficult it is for kids learning to read. It's an added barrier to masks. So we don't know the long-term effects yet, but I think it's really important that we consider them. And if there is the ability to free up choice, that we should really consider doing that. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That concludes our first public comment. We will have public comment again. I will not read my whole paragraph, but it'll happen again at the end of the meeting as well. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move us on to accepting the minutes. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accept the minutes of the February 2nd, 2022 workshop meeting as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Do I have any comments or questions on the minutes as presented? Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays? Abstentions? Thank you. Okay, we move on to committee reports. And I'm sorry, I should have removed this earlier, but Jocelyn is not with us this evening, so we will move the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee report to another meeting, please, Dusty. Which brings me to the Facilities Committee report. Matt?
So I don't want to be overly repetitive with some of the stuff that's already come up, but we had a really great Facilities Committee meeting last week. We had a tour of everything Eric was talking about. I'm not going to repeat the presentation. I think the biggest thing that came up, we've sort of tiptoed around a little bit this evening, which is there are these overarching infrastructure projects and challenges that the school requires, which are not within the purview of the capital project, but pertain to the upkeep and maintenance of a century-old structure. And so just to sort of plant the seed that we're going to be grappling with that in our budgetary conversations. Budgetary? Is that a word? Budget conversations. I'm a little sleepy. Not because of the meeting, just because of the long day before the meeting. So we're going to have to face those pretty large items. And they're not, this ties into what you were talking about, Madeline, they're not really optional things. They're things like making sure the roof isn't going to leak to destroy some of the wonderful work that's been done. So that'll be coming up, but just want to mention it because it was a large part of our meeting last week, and it's going to be a large part of our conversations to come. And again, this is sort of separate from the capital project. These are things that exist alongside the capital project and sort of regardless of the capital project. And maybe for us as a community, psychologically, we'd love it if that wasn't the case because we have this wonderful capital project, but the century-old roof and things like that, they don't care about the capital project. They just want to make sure that they're looked after as well. So that's all sort of on the horizon, and I just wanted to raise it so that we're all aware of it as it comes down the pike.
Thank you. Do I have questions for Matt? I have one. Do you have is there like a timeline that was presented of like when these things need to be done? Is that part of this report?
It's imminent. I mean, it's going to be part of our budget conversation for this year. And some of those items will be in the budget.
I'm guessing part of this is going to be a question for legal then as to how soon we can get a report on which items can be linked to contingency and which items will need to be new? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there are basically three tiers. There's the high priorities, mid priorities, and low priority. But so we have all that information. But the high priorities, a lot of that is being recommended over the next 1 to 3 years. So if anything is or can be covered under the capital project contingency, we certainly, the facilities committee will discuss it further. We'll come back to the board, and we're happy to make recommendations, try to get some more work done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Thank you, facilities committee. Next up, we have finance committee. Kent?
In case anybody that hasn't picked it up, we are facing some challenges with our budget heading into next year. We met today to go through some of that, to talk about some of that, and we'll continue to do that before we present out to the board. I would ask that the policy committee, in the spirit of looking at different ways to increase our revenues, take a look again at the non-resident tuition possibility and whether that's something we might want to introduce going forward, with the idea of perhaps bringing a little bit more revenue into our budget.
Thank you. So anyone have questions for Kent regarding our finance committee? You're going to be hearing a lot more from the finance committee going forward in terms of the budget, so. All right. You got a note of that, Courtney, for policy? Oh, yeah. Awesome, thank you.
Meeting coming up in March, I believe, so we'll.
Well, that'll work nicely with the timeline. I mean.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, then. I'm going to move on from committee reports. Thank you, everyone. To financial reports. We have accept the treasurer's report and claim audit report. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accepts the treasurer's report for January 2022 and the claims audit reports for December 2021 and January 2022 as presented. May I have a motion, please? Thank you. Any questions, comments, thoughts on the treasurer's reports or claims auditor's reports as presented? I'll just note that there were a couple of notes on the claims audit report from December. All of them look like they were cleared up for January, so thank you to you and your office, Joe, for your attention to those purchase orders and the process behind it. So, any other questions? All right, I'm going to move to a vote. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays, abstentions. Okay, thank you. Next up, we have the consent agenda. Let's see. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of Carl L. Albano, Superintendent, hereby approves the items of the personnel consent agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please? Thank you. Carl, do you want to speak to these briefly before we move on, or it's one item?
Yeah, sure. Basically, we continue to bring on per diem subs. That doesn't mean they work every day, they work as needed. A lot of the subs we hired have moved on to permanent teaching jobs. We're happy for them. It's a real tough job market out there, and teachers are in high demand. So we're doing a lot better with attendance. I think we're past the worst of COVID, it seems, and we may never need them, but it's good to have backup just in case.
All right. Do you have any questions for Carl regarding the consent agenda? Okay, I'm going to move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. Okay, we move on to new business then. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District approve the new business items A through F as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Okay. And speak a little bit to these before we move on.
Sure. One is a sports merger with Haldane. We have a long-standing relationship. Both middle schools are small. Alone, they may not be able to have a full modified team, so it's mutually beneficial. And we have a great relationship, and that would be for the upcoming school year, all the different sports team mergers. Also, you do have some special education contracts for our students who are district placed in other districts simply because we don't have the appropriate program here in Garrison. So there is that. And Joe, would you like to just take E, the welfare service contract with White Plains?
Yeah, I'll take D and E. So D is we participate in cooperative bids with the Southern Westchester BOCES and the Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES in order to get more favorable pricing and satisfy bid requirements on supplies, materials, equipment, and things like that. So that is an agreement that doesn't cost us anything, and it potentially allows us another way to purchase things and meet our requirements. When a student attends a private school and it's in a neighboring school district, that neighboring school district can charge for health services and some other student costs that are related to servicing students in those private schools. They bill us for those services. So, and it's based upon a calculation of the rate on a pure pupil basis, and that's what is done here. We have basically everywhere where you have a private school student, there is an ability to charge for health services. And then the last item is a couple of change orders that were discussed earlier in the meeting.
Do I have any questions for Carl or Joe regarding the new business items as presented? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. We've now reached the second public comment section this evening. I have a sign-up sheet here if anybody wishes to speak again. If you'd like to come back up, sure. Just come sign in again for me, please, if you don't mind. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, please go ahead. Sorry, the same policy applies. I'm just not reading my paragraph again. Let me know if you have any questions.
I just heard we're only allowed to speak for 3 minutes, so I got all nervous. But I do have more to say. Just the simple fact that to wear these masks on our faces is just a constant reminder that we live and breathe and fear COVID. It's a visual sign. It's a symbol that our children see, so we cannot get past COVID if we're wearing it on our face every day. It's that simple. And my niece was swept downriver this September and drowned. She's 15 years old. She lost her life. That was not anything to do with COVID. Deaths from other things are still happening. COVID is not what life is all about. So we have to keep that in mind and stop shoving it in our children's faces and wearing it on our face. I was very grateful that my children coped with this tragedy and loss so well. They had the mental strength, the stamina, the spiritual, the faith to endure this horrible loss. And I realized if they were mentally and psychologically already not well or broken, they probably wouldn't have been able to cope. So we really need to concentrate on being a nurturing environment and a positive symbol. Schools need to radiate positivity and inspiration, talk about courage. Fear is not a virtue, safety is not a virtue, but courage is, kindness is, love is. Those are the things that need to be taught and nurtured, not just in families, but supported throughout the community so we have healthy minds and healthy children, because life is not fair and it's not safe and it never will be, and it'll never be disease-free or death-free. And our children need to be able to cope. And that's just something I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry for yours and your family's loss. Okay. We're going to move on to board member comment. Go to David first, please. Okay. Madeline? Courtney? No comment. Kent? Okay. Matt?
Just to say I'm sorry for your family's loss, but no other comment.
I'll just add that I believe under the current, I know we didn't, on our business meetings, we have removed the president's remarks and superintendent's remarks in the effort to streamline this. The mask mandate remains in effect by the governor's order currently. It is not optional it is not the school board's option. The last I have seen is that the governor looks to reconsider this in early March. The other outstanding thing is the court case that was mentioned earlier this evening that could overturn it. We are aware of this. We are watching it. I know you, Carl, talk about this with the superintendents on your calls, and that you have been looking to, they're having conversations about what are the metrics, what is happening. So I appreciate your efforts in that regard. I do want to speak, though, to letting parents back in the building, especially as we complete the capital project. I know we have had some parents starting to come in for different things, and that may be perhaps a policy we can revisit going forward, taking into account that we are under construction as well. So our district is under other limitations at this point. But perhaps that is an area where we can start to look to invite people in, especially as these classrooms are completed, to see the work that we have done in a safe way. So perhaps that's something we can look to for future meetings.
Definitely.
Ends my comment. All right. Anyone else have anything? All right. We're going to move on to enter executive session. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby enters into executive session for the purpose of reviewing the personnel records of particular probationary personnel, discussing the employment history of particular persons, and discussing collective negotiations with the GTA and SRP bargaining units pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law. May I have a motion, please? Thank you. Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. We will adjourn the meeting without any further action being taken. All right, I look forward to seeing everyone in early March.